to Cryptic Accounts, a podcast by paranoid people for paranoid people. And this week on the show, we've got Dead Mountain and the Dyatlov incident. Thank you all so much for joining us. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the share. We appreciate it. Like, do all that stuff. I'm Patrick Ryan, joined by Dennis Cheney. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, Patrick. Thank you for having me aboard.
Well, I mean, this is our thing. It's just my week to run the ship. And boy, do I have a I think I have a fun little ride for you on this one.
Yeah, this is one of those rare weeks where you told me nothing.
Yeah, I've kept pretty silent about this one. It took me a little bit to kind of piece it all together, and you'll see why in a minute. Why it kind of anyway. Let's just jump right into it. Like I don't really have any housekeeping stuff I need to do. Do you have any housekeeping you want to do?
No,
Okay.
no. I'll
Well,
rest.
go with me on a journey to Soviet Russia, Dennis, in 1959. So January 1959. There's a group of skiers that decide to leave some extra food, skis, and a mandolin in a valley to keep safe as they start to head out on an expedition. The plan: retrieve the items on their way back. As a joke, one member drew up a fake newspaper with the headline, according to the latest information, abominable snowmen live in the northern Urals. With their gear stored, they headed out towards peak number 1079, known to locals as Dead Mountain or the Mountain of Death.
Ooh. In Russia, snow shovels you.
Yeah, so you can see on the map like where this is in like comparison to like Moscow.
Yep. It's about
Little north of the middle of Kazakhstan. So Borat's running around here. I'm sure he's a young boy at this point.
few hundred miles east of Moscow. I was wondering if maybe this wasn't an escape plan, like maybe this mountain was up by Finland or something, but I guess not.
No. Um, so so in this first picture, it doesn't really matter, but for people, for you, and for YouTube and Facebook, you can see this is the group heading out to conquer Dead Mountain for
Definitely.
fun. Bunch of college students. So for fun, and because I don't want to tell this whole story without like giving the credit to the people that are actually on the suit, I'm about to say a bunch of very Russian names, and I
Okay.
feel like it's gonna go all right. So Igor Dyatlov is 23 at this point. Yuri Doroshenko is 21. Leah Dumila, also known as Luda Dubinina, is 20 years old. She's one of two females that are on this. Yuri Yorka Krivan. Oh God,
I would
Krivon
say Krivonishenko.
Krivonishenko. Krivonishenko, yeah. Alexander Sasha Kolovatov, Zeneda Zena, Zomogorova, 22. Oh, the last guy was 24. Yuri was 23. I'm sorry. I don't know. I think I spaced off on the ages there.
For those of
Uh,
you keeping score at home.
well, if you've been listening for a while, I think I'm doing really good for name pronunciation so far. Rustum, also known as Rustic, Slobundin, Nikolai Thibu Briganoles, uh, both those guys are 23. Semyon Zolotaryov he's the oldest guy in the group. He's 38. Also, he's a late addition to this thing. Like
Was he like
this
the professor? Was he like their
I it's
host?
unclear. I couldn't really it's unclear why he showed up and went with them. Like they knew him, I'm assuming, but there's no indication he was a professor. Like we're not really sure. We're gonna get to him in a little bit.
Simeon
Well,
is much older. I
oh
think
yeah,
I know why he's there.
he's a little bit old. He's quite a bit older than these guys. Teacher's a good guess, but no. Um we'll get into a little bit later. I will say he has maybe some military training and stuff in his background that's a little odd for this group as well. And then there's Yuri Yudin, who's 21 years old. He's going to be the smartest guy out of the group. We're going to get back to him in a little bit.
He looks like
Uh,
the smartest guy.
so here's what we know about what came to be known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. 9 skiers, all college students, had set out from Yekaterinburg, then known by its communist name, Sverdlovsk, in January of 1959, singing songs on an overnight train. They planned to ski about 200 miles over the course of 16 days, summiting several peaks along the way, and then allowing enough time to get back for the spring semester. So, after catching a lift with some lumberjacks and following a sleigh driver north, the group skied out of an abandoned village on January 28th. So they take off into the Ural Mountains. They're trekking along. I'm assuming they made camp along the way. We don't really know much about what happened until a few days later. They made camp on February 1st when they'd reached Dead Mountain.
Okay.
So they set up camp, and the camp basically just consisted of like one large tent that they were all going to sleep in, basically, is what I gathered. There was just one tent. It didn't look that big. It seemed like a squeeze for as many people as they had, but I guess if you're out there in the cold, like you probably wanted as many bodies near each other as you can just for survival purposes. Because, like, it's at the time when this is happening, like overnight, it's going to get down to like negative 40 degrees up in these mountains.
Wow.
And this is like, just a fun little trip away from college before, in between, Christmas break. They're going to go hang out in the mountains for a little while. So they set up this camp. And like I said, one large tent, they erected it on solid ground behind kind of a snow-covered ridge to use this as like wind protection during the sub-zero overnight temperatures. So, and I will say, like, all these guys and these two women, all experienced trekkers. Like, this isn't like their first time out skiing and doing all this stuff. This is like
I would hope not.
They enjoy doing this. So like friends and family and everything, like this was not an uncommon thing for them to do. They were good at this. So that night on February 1st, when they're camped out, these 9 trekkers all burst out of the tent, half dressed suddenly, and fled to their deaths in a blizzard.
Oh.
Some of their corpses were found with broken bones. One of the girls was missing her tongue.
Oh.
One of the women, tongue gone. Don't know where the tongue is. Not here. Not here. So for decades, few people beyond the group's friends and family were even aware of this event. It only became known to the wider public in 1990 when a retired official's account ignited a curiosity that soon metastasized. So today, the Dyatlov Pass incident, named after one of the students, Igor, has become Russia's biggest unsolved mystery, a font of endless conspiracy theories, aliens, government agents, Arctic dwarves, and yes, even abominable snowmen.
My money's on the dwarfs.
I'm just saying, don't count the dwarves out in this. So at various points, all these things have been blamed for the deaths of these students. So one state television show regularly actually put from like the 90s, till pretty recently, was like having experts on to talk to them and then like having them take lie detector tests as they were talking about this to check. Because some of these explanations get so crazy that they like just assume these people are just lying.
Right.
But a fair majority of these people feel very convicted about what they're saying.
Now, were any of these people involved in the trip in any way, or are they just giving their...
There's people that were involved in the search, like the search for them.
Okay.
That have come out and talked.
I just thought a lie detector seemed like a weird thing if you're just offering like a theory about something you weren't involved in.
Look, I don't know. I mean, this may be how they do their game shows over there. I don't know about the Russian culture as far as
that seems like a very Russian thing to do, like a game show, but to like hook you up to a lie.
Comrade, you are a lie detector test. You don't lie, you win big prize. So in 2019, the Russian Prosecutor General's office announced a new inquiry into the deaths to stop what it called the growth of rumors and to, quote, establish the truth.
Dwarfs.
Yeah. But if the Dyatlov Pass incident has shown anything, it's that closure will be elusive. Even a definitive judgment is unlikely to quell these speculations. In Russia, conspiracy theories are an essential part of daily life, which I wasn't aware of this. Like, okay, So, an unsolved mystery such as Dyatlov Pass incident would no doubt rile up truthers in the United States. But the Russian obsession with the incident is above and beyond internet forum debates on like Area 51 and the Chupacabra, like in the U.S. U.S. conspiracy theories kind of develop on like the fringes of public life, whereas conspiracy mongering is mainstream in Russia. Like Russia is a country which I was not aware of this. Did you know that 57% of Russians think that the Apollo moon landing was a complete hoax?
That is surprising,
It seems like a lot of people, right?
but you're the country that was run by these dictators that lied to you
Yeah,
about everything,
very
and
true.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, like I said, like I'd already kind of mentioned, like we didn't know about this thing with this group of students until the '90s because it literally. We're gonna get to it, but like basically got investigated,
Oh
and
yeah.
then case closed basically, and then they sealed all the documents.
I mean, if you grew up in Soviet Russia, odds are you had family or friends who were just like taken away by the
Yep.
government one day. So I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I'd probably be willing to listen to some conspiracy theories.
Yeah, in Soviet era, conspiracies of spies from like capitalist countries and those of counter-revolution, the Russians locked up literally millions of people, largely for probably made-up paranoia. Like, just
Yeah.
you said the wrong thing and the wrong person heard it. Now you're just gone, and that was the thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense why so many people are conspiracy theorists then.
Yep. So columnist Oleg Kashin had argued many still feel today that something, quote, was hidden behind the black and white photographs of the Dyatlov expedition. Yeah, they found they were taking pictures. We're gonna get to those too. Um, the group was yeah we found their cameras and stuff.
Oh.
So searchers later found their tracks along a frozen river, and upon reaching Dead Mountain, stumbled across a half-collapsed tent on a steep, wind-spent slope. Inside, food supplies and outer clothing were laid out as if the group had been about to cook dinner. 9 pairs of boots stood along one wall. Bizarrely, the tent appeared to have been slashed open from the inside. In the forest below, the investigators came across two bodies under a cedar tree lying next to the remains of a fire. Although the temperature had been down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit the night that the group disappeared, the pair that were found near the fire were only wearing long underwear.
Oh.
Again, all their outer clothes back up in the collapsed tent. Um, Also, fragments of human skin were found on trees, and it was revealed that they had broken off branches also. So they like went flying through the trees as well. The bodies of Dyatlov and two others, also without shoes and coats, were found several hundred feet away. It wasn't until the snow began to thaw 2 months later that the remaining four corpses were actually found. Two of those had broken ribs, and one skull was partially crushed.
Whoa.
So the inquiry was there was an inquiry that was carried out in the spring of 1959, and many unanswered questions remained. Like, why did the skiers flee the safety of the tent to certain death in the wind and snow? What caused the blunt force traumas on several members? Why did an analysis find elevated levels of radioactivity on two of the victims' clothing? These questions were all beyond the purview of the official investigators, who, while baffled, concluded that there had been no foul play and that the students were killed by, quote, an elemental force that the tourists were not able to overcome. The case was closed and the findings were archived as secret, as was the routine in the Soviet Union at the time.
Now I will say this: I've listened to enough survival stories and like weird disappearance stuff, and maybe you'll get to this, but a lot of people don't know this. One of the final stages of hypothermia is taking off your clothes, usually.
Really? I
Yes.
did not know that.
It's called like something, I could be completely wrong, but I think it's called like paradoxical disrobing or something like that. And it's because when you enter hypothermia, you actually start to feel extremely hot.
Oh, really?
And you also start to lose your mind. So a
I
lot of
figured the crazy part, yeah.
yeah. So you feel hot, you don't have your wits about you, so you don't have enough state of mind to be like, I'm not actually hot, I'm cold. And
Yeah.
then these people will like rip off their clothes to stay
And
cool.
that makes sense to an extent, but again, their clothes are laid out. Like they
Yeah,
didn't rip them off as they were running out of the tent. And also, I don't know if I've mentioned it yet. I think I did already. I think I wrote it in there earlier. The tent was ripped from the inside. They
yeah.
ripped through the tent to get out.
Oh, yeah, and all the blunt force trauma and like human DNA in trees, that's just bizarre, man.
That's almost like something's blocking you from getting out of the tent while also bludgeoning you, and you're trying to escape by like crawling out, and then you're thrown through trees in some way.
Now the fire was outside the tent, right? It didn't
Yes, the
go down
fire
the
was down the hill. Where was that fire? It was away from it. I think that was the ones that were a few hundred feet.
okay. So they were trying to escape something, it sounds like.
Yeah, but it sounds like some of them didn't go very far and then like tried to set up camp. But again, we're in a blizzard, so like,
Everyone probably scattered.
yeah, if you can make it a few hundred feet, you can't see your camp anymore. And also, if you're in just your long underwear, like you're probably ready. You're hoping you can survive now. Like, hopefully, whatever it is isn't chasing you out this far away from the tent.
Oh man.
But something's caused you to run away suddenly. Also, the tent has collapsed.
Yeah. I mean, right now I'm thinking maybe if I had to go for the most like logical,
Dwarves.
I would think that well, yeah, obviously dwarfs. I'm still on team dwarf, but if one of them went like crazy, maybe the 38-year-old guy inside of the tent started trying to hit people over the head or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Um.
The
Yeah.
radioactivity thing is weird.
Do what?
The radioactivity thing is bizarre.
Yeah, that was one. It was also, and if I end up saying it later, that's fine. But it was also found on the ground in the area too. Like there was hints of radiation in the area in general, but two in particular had radioactivity on their clothes.
Weird.
Yeah. Also weird that only two of them had it that many days into the journey as well. Like they're all together. They're all sleeping in the same tent.
Yeah. Well, I
Like,
guess if you found these bodies days or in some cases months later, and if they were scattered,
yeah.
because they're in a blizzard, like some of them might have landed in areas that had more radioactivity. I don't know. I'm gonna let you keep going. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. One local journalist was actually barred from filing a report on the incident, and for decades, the only publication related to the mystery was a novel by one of the searchers. It had a little bit more upbeat ending that went like this. So one of the searchers, like I guess, wanted to put a bow, wanted to wrap this story up, this thing that he's talking about. So he said that after hurricane force winds blow up one girl down the slope and trap the others who rush to help her, the group leader attempts to return to the tent and dies. The rest find shelter in a trapper's hut, and that was all anyone really had to go on as far as any kind of official details on what happened to the group.
Well, that's just a lie.
I know, it's not even a good ending, really.
No.
Well, they found a hut, but then they hid out in there, but then they decided to run back outside, and then just they all, the rest of them
Yeah, that's
died.
weird. I hate to go back to it, but no wonder Russians don't trust anything. Like this is like an
This is the
accident.
this is the official report.
You could just say there was a big blizzard, it blew the tent, and they died. Like, why would you just lie about a bunch of them living? Like,
Well, I think maybe the original search party may have not been government. I think other people may have already known, like
mm,
maybe been involved in searching. I don't know that detail. I wish I would have looked into that. But yeah. So yeah, obviously that's not what happened though. So eventually came the end of the Soviet Union, as we know, which lifted the curtain of silence about so many things that had happened there. So onto this ripe ground fell the seed of the Dyatlov mystery, and in January of 1990, the former Communist Party head of a town near the Dyatlov Pass wrote a response to a newspaper article and article about a supposed UFO sighting in the area. In it, he described what had happened to the skiers, claiming that the holes in their tent were made by falling debris from a rocket test.
Mm.
The paper later published a story in which Lev Ivanov, the lead investigator on the 1959 Dyatlov inquiry, was quoted as saying the students were killed by a UFO. The article also repeated rumors that the group could have been killed by the indigenous people or radiation from a weapons test. A few months later, Ivanov wrote his own article in another newspaper blaming the students' injuries on a quote, heat ray or a strong energy that is completely unknown to us.
Oh, bizarre.
And this is in the 90s now. Like, this isn't in the 50s and the 60s when this guy's coming out. This is Soviet Union's over. Like, this guy's like, no, man, this is what happened. Like, I investigated this. I didn't say nothing. I couldn't say anything, but now I can say something. Here's what happened. But their story kind of shifts a little. I mean, they don't know. They weren't there, obviously, but basically they think some sort of UFO or weapons test, but probably a UFO with some sort of weird weapon that nobody's ever seen before outside of maybe the government or whatever this extraterrestrial thing is.
Yeah, and those do leave radiation a lot of the time.
Yep. So this photo, and there's not much to it. If you're just listening, you're not going to miss much. We're going to be able to describe it pretty easy. But it's often referred to as frame number 34, and it was discarded from the case file because of its poor quality. Proponents of the UFO theory, though, insist it should have never been discarded, as it was the only way to uncover the truth about the Dyatlov incident. So basically, you can see this, Dennis. It just looks like some blurred light.
In a circle.
Yes. And this seems insignificant until 2019 when journalists interviewed Boris Sychev, a member of the search team whose task at the time was to locate the remaining bodies of the deceased hikers. The man says that the search team witnessed an unusual phenomenon they called a fireball. Quote, we saw a fireball floating in the air near the crossing. It was similar to the lunar disk, but it wasn't the moon. This fireball was bigger in diameter. It departed from the crossing and floated away from us. We did not observe bright glowing, and then it just disappeared over the horizon. We were all perplexed.
Whoa. Okay.
So I
UFO.
think this is
Yeah.
maybe what they're taking to pick what this picture is, and this is why the UFO believers think this picture, particularly if this is blurred light. But again, they're out in the middle of nowhere. Why would they be trying to take a picture at night like this? Like you could
Yeah.
argue accident, I guess, but it doesn't look like a campfire.
No, it's very strange. Also, I wonder now, because there's so many UFOs like mountains. I wonder why this is called Death Mountain. I wonder if maybe this isn't more common there. There's not like legends of like fireballs coming in and out of this place. I don't know if you've done any research on that.
Well, I think I get into it a little bit. The indigenous people, that's what the indigenous people call it. Yeah, nobody really goes around here, especially at this time of year when they're doing this. Like the indigenous people are like, nah, you don't go up Death Mountain. Like, no, that's not a, that's
It's
the
Death
mountain. You don't
Mountain.
go to the Mountain of Death during blizzard season. Like,
Just in case we didn't make it clear enough.
yeah, we put signs up that said Dead Mountain, Mountain of Death. Like, what are you people doing? What are you white folks doing out here? What are you doing? What are you doing?
What's going on?
So yeah, nobody really messes around. But yeah, I didn't look into too much into it other than yeah, you just don't mess around here. Like it's treacherous basically. Like I think but yeah, that's just I don't know if the indigenous people had anything like extra tied to that. That would have been a good thing to spin off into. But yeah, no, I didn't.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, Dennis. There's always one question. There's always one question where I'm like, man, I should have dug farther. There's so much in this though. So I found another interesting, possibly related experience in a UFO log, also from 1959. It's not in the exact same region, but it's not too far. So it's January 21st, so a couple weeks before, week and a half before. It's in Gdynia, Poland. It's at night. The summary of this sighting was a luminous object was seen to fall into the harbor of Gdynia. Divers set to reach it brought back a piece of unrusted metal whose composition is not publicly known. Several days later, a strange male figure wearing a sort of uniform was encountered dragging himself along the beach. Part of his face and hair appeared to be burnt. On taking him to a hospital, it was found that the uniform was made of metal and that the being's organs were quite different from ours. The number of fingers and toes also different. The creature died after an armband was removed. Its body was sent to the USSR. An autopsy revealed a different structure of internal organs and a spiral system of blood circulation. It had six-fingered extremities and was about 1.6 meters tall. The body was stored in a frozen container and stored in an underground bunker, apparently in the Moscow area. Apparently, divers found half of the object embedded in the mud under the water. According to information later uncovered, in fact, not one but two alien bodies were recovered on the shore within the short time gap between the recoveries. With a short time gap between the recoveries. One of the aliens was dead, while the second gave signs of life and remained alive for a long time. He was examined in the hospital and soon fell into a coma like state after an arm bracelet was removed. The
Stop
alien.
taking off these guys' arm bracelets.
Well, I think this is the same one. I think it's going into more detail. I just
Okay.
pulled this log completely, and I've got the link to it in the show notes. Um, is that I don't even know. This is a weird offshoot because I was just kind of looking for other sightings in this area that kind of matched up with this weird light thing. So okay, so this alien had six digits on their hands and feet, so an extra toe, extra finger on it on hands and feet. An autopsy was conducted on one of the dead aliens. The second one, the one in the coma-like state, was put in a special chamber aimed to support its vital functions. The six-figure beings, the one taken to the USSR, the other apparently remained in Poland at an undisclosed location. It's still stored in an isolated top-secret underground bunker located under a building of the territory of the Biomedical Research Facility Center east of. Ooh,
Good luck, buddy.
that's what I should have looked up. Solnechernogorsk, together with other alien bodies, supposedly. Uh, and yeah, this is from a bunch of Russian like UFO researchers that are all kind of quoted as talking about this or creating this log. Um, so another fun fact.
That sounds like a Venusian, by the way.
What?
The
The six
description.
feet. It does a little bit like some Valiant Thor stuff, right?
A little bit. They're a little bit taller. Yeah. Yeah.
Has hair, has some weird suit. You know, I didn't even think about that till you just said that. Sounds a lot like Valiant Thor. That might be a Venetian.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's
Huh.
a couple of Venetians joyriding in Poland.
Yeah, they've got some sort of base up here in these mountains. We're gonna get to the layout and what some people think about that a little bit later, of like the geography of this area. Just we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. There's so much, Dennis. There's so much. Another fun fact about all this. So the deputy engineer of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant had the same surname as Igor Dyatlov. This raised a lot of suspicions of possible connections to the disaster. Those people
Okay.
that thought maybe he was related to the guy that was involved in Chernobyl.
Hmm. That's so many years later, though.
Still family though,
Yeah.
being uncle.
Right.
Russian Prime Minister at the time, Dmitry Medvedev, did I say that right?
Hmm.
Has also said that aliens have visited Earth in TV interviews. When one journalist asked him whether Putin was given secret files about aliens along with the codes needed to activate Russia's nuclear arsenal, Medvedev replied, quote, along with the briefcases with nuclear codes, the president of the country is given a special top secret folder. This folder, in its entirety, contains information about aliens who visited our planet.
I've been saying for a while, if you had to give them truth serum, if I could have dinner with one person in the world, it would be Putin.
Man, he would have a lot of stuff to tell you.
he would know all the KGB stuff from the '60s. He would know all about
Yes.
Kennedy. He would know about the aliens. Like if he had to tell you the truth, he's the
Yes.
guy.
He would
Yeah,
be the guy. That's a good call. That's a real good call.
yeah, I'm proud of it.
So Medvedev goes on to say, along with this, you are given a report of the absolutely secret special services, our service that exercises control over aliens on the territory of our country. More detailed information on this topic you can get from a well known movie called Men in Black. I will not tell you how many of them are among us because it may cause panic.
Oh, jeez. I never heard the Medvedev said this. That's crazy.
Yeah, I will have I have the link to the interview and stuff. But yeah, he went on TV and said all this. Um, so another one that you wouldn't think is kind of connected to all this, Colonel Yuri Gagarin, who was born in Smolensk. Uh, he was the first, and he was the first human in space. That's why that name sounds familiar. Smolensk. Ugh, that's the last time I got to say his town. It's a northwestern Russian city which lies not far from the Kolot Sayokil region, where the Dyatlov party was lost. While
Hmm.
all Russia was stunned by the case of the missing hikers, Gagarin took a special interest in the events surrounding the mysterious and mangled deaths of the 9 hikers near Mount Oroten, deep in the Ural Mountains. Gagarin's interest in the mystery of the expedition was so great that apparently a certain high priority was assigned either officially or personally by Gagarin to his spaceflight, that he actually took pictures of the region as he flew over it while orbiting the Earth.
Interesting.
That's how much either he was tasked with this or how much he cared about it. Like he wanted to make sure that there were pictures taken of this region where these people went missing. Because he's doing this in 1961, so it's been a couple of years since these kids have gone missing.
Right.
So at the time that he had made his disclosure, Lev Ivanov stated that he had hidden the UFO presence from his final. So he was the investigator, remember? He says that he had hidden all uh, this UFO presence from his final public report, and that he had removed evidence that clearly showed that UFOs had somehow been involved in the deaths and mutilation of the bodies. Ivanov admits that the word came down from the highest levels of the Soviet government.
Yeah, the mutilation's very strange.
It is very strange, right? It doesn't make sense. It's the weirdest thing about the whole thing.
Now, it wasn't
Well, the
how
clothes
long
thing is weird too.
now how long was it? So they disappeared. Let me get a timeline going here. So they disappeared.
February 1st is when they died.
Okay, and then when were the first bodies discovered that had been mutilated?
Ooh, I think it had been. I don't know if it gave an exact time. It was like within a week when they originally
Crushed
started
bones
finding.
is weird. Now I can see like
Obviously, I don't
animals.
think it was the next day, but it was pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, if the blizzard was over, like you could see like I don't know what's in the mountain. Wolves, leopards. I don't know. Like maybe some opportunistic like scavenger animals like picked them apart.
But this crushed skull's a little weird.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Also, in a couple of them, eyebrows missing.
See, that's just like weird random
Yeah, it
event.
was weird little
Yeah.
random things like this on a couple of them where it was like, why? Like they were
Right.
thrown about or whatever and beat up, but like one eyebrow missing.
Weird.
Like something like pull, like it plucked it. I don't know. It was weird. Burnt it off. I think singe it off makes sense, but we don't know. It was recorded that some were missing eyebrows. At
Maybe they
least one of
got
them was missing eyebrows.
maybe they got abducted and the aliens were like, "We're just going to drop you off where you came." And they're like, "No, please don't." And they're like, "No, you're down in the blizzard. You go."
Yep, that's possible. So in
Oh,
19,
you know what? Hold
oh,
on.
go
I
ahead.
want to say one other thing.
Yeah,
So the crushed skull thing. Okay. I don't know how familiar you are with Missing 411. Eventually, we'll have to do shows on it. It's a series of books about people who go missing in national parks.
Okay.
I believe there's a weird thing. It's either that or there's some string of UFO abduction instances where it appears that people have been like just dropped.
Huh.
Like something has like their cause of death is just to be dropped from a high.
Well, yeah, and again, it seems like this, like there's skin on trees, branches are broken. Like some of these people have
Yeah.
flown through the air.
It's like they kicked them out of and there's other abduct.
Almost like they were speeding by and pushed them out, like to where they're like,
Yeah. So this
because they're
kind
kind
of
of spread out in little groups.
hmm. Yeah. This kind of matches with that MO.
So, okay. Yeah, no, the, that's weird. Yeah, the dropping thing, I hadn't thought about that either. That's, whew. Maybe. I mean, something picked them up and threw.
Yeah, I think there's cattle mutilations too, where it appears that they've been dropped for whatever reason.
It seems
I don't know.
weird that
Maybe
they
just
would climb trees in a blizzard and then jump out of them.
yeah, people do crazy things. I mean, the problem with this case, and I know we got a ways to go, is that the files, the investigative files, are probably so edited. You know what I mean? And so that this is like, who knows?
Well, to an extent, I mean, because they did keep good records on stuff, they just didn't release it publicly.
That's a good point.
Like Ivanov is basically, I'm assuming, like, I don't think he edited out of what the government saw as far as reports go. It's his official report where he's saying, like, I didn't talk about the mutilation, like the UFO stuff, because I got told not to. Like
I mean, they love.
that means he recorded it and said something to somebody who's like, nah, you can't tell them that. Like it's a blizzard. We're gonna tell them it was a blizzard, and that's
I guess
that.
they like to get you when you're isolated.
Yeah. So 1961, during Yuri Gagarin's 108-minute long space flight, as his Vostok 1 spacecraft flew over the mountains region of the Urals, he took pictures. And you can see the picture here. It's not the greatest picture. We're going to get into what some people think about this region because there's a whole thing just about him taking these pictures that there's a lot of people that believe it's very meaningful that he was doing this. As I mean, we've already found the bodies. Why are you looking at this from space? Why is this such a priority on the first time we're going to get up this high to be able to see all the geography in one shot?
Yeah.
So some believe that if you were a spacefaring extraterrestrial, the geography contains a significant group of landmarks to follow to a UFO landing zone. So here's what they claim to see. Maybe you can see it. I feel it's kind of a stretch, but it seems to be pretty prevalent belief among those who think this kind of like UFO theory, extraterrestrial theory was involved in all this. So here's what people see in Yuri's photos. One, a cross and a circle seen in relief to the northwest, which I kind of. Do you see that up in the very top right? Because the top will be north, the bottom will be south.
The west will be left.
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So yeah. So it's very okay. I
Yeah,
see.
northwest. I'm sorry. That'd be the.
That actually is kind of interesting. I kind of do see that. Yeah.
So they see that as well as what they describe as a figure eight fortress in the center dominating the region.
Looks a bit like an 8.
A little bit. They also see a domed tower to the east of this figure eight region.
Okay, I can see what they're identifying as these things, I should say.
Yeah, I guess I can too. I don't know. This is one of the parts in all the theories, because we're going to get into a few different theories, where I was like, all right, enough of you were talking about it, but I just don't see it. A mountainous plateau with a Bigfoot, quote, Bigfoot print, recognizable only from outer space or extreme high altitude. For example, in those days, the U-2 or the SR-71 Blackbird or Corona satellite. Again, I don't know.
Now I'm getting confused. So, for instance, when I look for the Bigfoot print, I see the dome.
Yeah, and I think they're just talking about the whole thing. Like it looks like it would be that. I don't think you're saying you actually see a Bigfoot. There's not like a thing big enough to walk around and make a footprint like that.
No, that'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous, and I think we would have noticed it by now. So okay. So the UFO claims have been widely dismissed, even to this day, as we look back to a very interesting. But okay, so there's still dismissed, which at this point I'm like, come on, guys, like they're saying we've got alien tech now. Like this isn't the alien part. It may not be here, but the UFO part is not debatable anymore. Like it's a thing.
No, there are UFOs.
But we can flash back to a quote from 1960, so a year after this all happens, from Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter. If you don't know who he is, he was the first director of the CIA.
Also has a Space Force battle cruiser named after him.
Yep. Here's probably why. Quote, through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. He said this to the New York Times, February 27th, 1960.
Feeling sassy that day, Roscoe.
He really was. He was like, guess what? I'm going to drop some truth bombs on you, and y'all ain't ready.
I'll drop it on you, and I'm still going to make fun of you, and you're still going to get called foolish.
Yep, going to get called foolish for another 50 years. I never heard that quote before.
That's crazy. To the New York Times.
Yes, like publicly.
By the way, it's not an official Space Force battlecruiser. It was from that episode we did about the hacker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that was the first ship he uncovered, was the Roscoe Hillenkotter.
Yeah.
The USS Hillenkotter.
Yeah. But now, okay, so on to a different Yuri. Yuri Kuntsevich, head of the Dyatlov Memorial Fund, he argues that the students had been asked by a Western agent named the Mole to photograph a secret missile test. After doing so, they were murdered. Quote, then they moved the tent 1.5 kilometers to an impractical place. That was done by a mop-up team of soldiers. They had several helicopters.
Well, the helicopters might explain the fireball theory. But
Maybe.
all of this in a blizzard?
Yeah.
Or was there even a blizzard?
Yeah.
Well, I think the blizzard's probably uncontroverted.
Okay, yeah, I think it's pretty much fact that we're going to get into a little bit because at a certain point, U.S. research, like American researchers, start getting involved too, and I think we can track weather patterns like that pretty far back. Like I don't know that that's going to be a politicized thing, but even to this day, the Soviets would have been able to hide in some way. I think somebody else would have probably recorded it. Meteorologists.
Plus like half the bodies were so snowed in that they didn't find them. Until,
4 months later. They didn't find him till almost summer.
So that's a high risk operation. Go out there, kill these kids in the middle of that.
Basically, yeah. Like it was crazy that they were out there to begin with. Even crazier that somebody would follow them out to get, like, why wouldn't you get them day one of the journey on a much closer, you know what I mean? Like you didn't have to wait till they got this far in to like this very remote, very dangerous place at a very dangerous time of year. It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, okay, so he argued, like I said, that they were somehow spies, basically. Igor Dyatlov's own sister, Tatiana Perminova, said she had heard lots of theories, but could only repeat what her parents had told her at the time of her brother's disappearance and death. Quote, they were sure that the military was somehow involved.
Curious.
Another theory put forward by American researcher Donnie Eicher, as well as by some Russian scientists, is that the severe winds blowing over the dome of the mountain created a vortex of whirlwinds, which produced a low-frequency sound that is not entirely audible, but vibrates hair cells in the ear, causing nausea and intense psychological discomfort. Under that onslaught in the pitch dark, the students could have been overcome by feelings of fear and panic.
I kind of like that theory, actually.
It's not, it's plausible.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know anything about low frequency sound coming from.
It's also, I kind of looked into this a little bit. Any of these, we could have probably done a whole episode just on the particular theory. These aren't even all the theories that are floating around Russia. Like, I just picked some.
That's interesting to me.
Some of the ones that kind of held on, but this is kind of more of a theoretical theory. Like we think this is a thing that can happen. I don't know how much proof there really is behind this actually being possible. you'd have to have just the right wind combinations, basically, and the right geography to make this a thing.
Right.
So, yeah, kind of theory, but based in science, it is plausible. Perhaps one of the most interesting claims is that the group met their grisly end at the hands of a Yeti, or a Bigfoot-like creature that inhabits the remote regions of the Ural Mountains. The local Mansi tribe has legends of a Yeti-like creature called the mink, and furthermore, it is said to roam the area of the incident, which may be why they call it Death Mountain, or Mountain of Death.
Because there's Bigfoot there.
Now, back to the pictures. Don't worry, we're not hopping off the Yeti Bigfoot idea yet. I got a picture to show you. There's a picture recovered from the belongings of the group that Nikolai Brignoles took on his camera. On a shot known as frame 17, there is a strange picture that seems to show a figure that bears a resemblance to a Bigfoot type creature.
What? That's.
What do you think?
I have so many feelings.
There's just a dark figure up a hill. It just looks brownish. I'm just basing that based on what you can kind of see of a tree.
I would love.
But his face is the same color as his clothing. Like, he looks to be one solid color, whatever this figure is.
It could be a guy in a ski mask.
Also, well, they're not wearing ski masks, and I should have put some up higher. Nobody's really dressed that looks like this in any of the pictures of the group. Like, I didn't include all of them. Like, I looked at a bunch of pictures. Like, nobody really fits this. It could be a beard and a hat, I suppose, but everything looks very uniformed in color. It's in light. You could tell that's in daylight when this is happening.
It's definitely either a person who has a face covering, or that's a Bigfoot, I guess. It's not like a wildlife. That's a humanoid figure.
Yeah, naysayers say that it's one of the group, possibly scouting out their location and coming back down, and somebody's taking a picture of it. But I would, again, when we get to the other pictures here in a little bit, this is kind of a blurry picture based on the level of pictures they take the rest of the time. Like, they have group pictures of them. Like, again, back up to that blurry one at the beginning where they were marching off. That was into the blizzard, that first picture.
I'm not a photographer, but you can see this is clearly the camera is focused on that tree in the foreground.
Yeah.
So I know Bigfoot likes to make things blurry in his photographic appearances, but I don't know, man. That looks to me like a person in like a jacket and some sort of face covering.
And it could be.
And I kind of do see a color difference between what you would think where the pants would start near the waist. I see that as darker as the body, and I see that as lighter. I see the face and the pants area being darker than the shirt area.
See, but I almost contribute that to maybe almost shadowing.
Oh, it's just so hard. It's the 50s. Yeah.
And we don't know where the sun is at this point. We don't know the time of the day. There's no timestamp with it.
I mostly want to diss on this photo because it hurts my dwarf theory, because that's at least man size.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. There wasn't a whole lot of weight to the dwarf theory. I just kind of sprinkled it in there. I'm sorry, Dennis. Sorry to let
Are we even gonna get into the dwarfs?
There's not gonna be any dwarf theory.
Oh,
it was just weird folklore that was just like, no, that's not what happened. Like, it was just.
You included the Bigfoot, but not the dwarfs? Okay, all right.
I had to pick and choose.
Now I'm mad. It's been like an hour, and I was waiting for my dwarfs.
I'm sorry. Less talked about is the claim that the hikers were the unfortunate victims of escaped prisoners from the gulags in the region.
Oh.
Many such prisoners who very well may have been incarcerated since World War II, so well over a decade, and wouldn't have been up to speed with all the world events. They would have been imprisoned in facilities like this, and to them, the conflict would have still very much been going on.
They got Ramboed.
Huh?
They got Ramboed.
Yeah. Other people kind of speculated that, and if they were escaped from a gulag, that they might, if the kids saw them, they may kill them just so there's no witnesses. Like it's a small group, depending on how many of it had escaped from this prison.
Yeah, I keep going back to the violence that seemed to be inflicted on these people.
Yeah,
I know you can fall and hit your head.
but everybody, a good chunk of the group falls.
But it's like your eyebrow missing and
Yeah,
everybody's skull is
a tongue missing, a tongue ripped out of the one
yeah.
woman's head.
That to me sounds like cattle mutilation.
Yeah,
Or I keep going back to maybe depending on how long that particular body was there, like maybe a scavenger animal.
that's possible too. It's weird that not more of them would have had their. You would think more tongues would have been removed if it was an animal eating them, because that's not a full meal for something like a coyote or a wolf or something like. And again, they wouldn't. That wouldn't be the one thing that they pick out.
That's my problem with this case is
Like
that
nobody's guts got eaten out, which that's kind of where I go with scavenger. Like, okay, maybe something ate a tongue out.
that's
Maybe
my
something
problem though.
figured out a way to crack a skull open.
Do we know that no guts were taken out?
Yes,
Okay.
that was not a thing. The injuries that I've listed are pretty much the extent of the injuries that were really anything. Some people were just dead. A couple of them were just, there were bodies dead. Again, not dressed though. Like they had also ran out, fallen down, frozen, got covered in snow. It's unclear where the other four were found at. And they had pictures of a couple bodies. Most of them were near each other, but still spaced out in groups.
Right.
Like it was like groups of like 2 or 3, basically.
And it makes sense no matter what, whether it was a natural thing or something attacked them or somebody attacked them or there was like an abduction that they would scatter in groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least the buddy system. Yeah, you follow one other person into the blizzard, basically.
I'll
And
follow
everybody's running, going different directions. What's that?
you. I said I'd follow you, buddy.
I appreciate it. I'll lead the way. So, in addition to the potential threats from escaped Gulag prisoners, the Gulag authorities themselves were likely to shoot first and ask questions later, particularly in the region the hikers were. Might the Gulag authorities possibly conducting a standard patrol of the area, or maybe looking for an escaped prisoner? They may have been a little eager for a potential apprehension and just, kind of killed the hikers in error.
Or they were doing that test
Yeah,
and they wanted to kill everyone in the area.
yeah. But imagine the anger from like the local population if this was to become known. So even in an official investigation, you're not going to tell the people that's what it looks like happened, because you don't want them to then revolt in some way. So you'd think there'd be a cover up involved there. There's a potential hole in these theories, though, and that's that the nearest gulag from where the bodies were found is about 60 miles from where the group is. So not unreal, but again, this is in mountains and stuff. This isn't like a flat surface that you're running across or whatever. Like that's a pretty decent journey, especially in blizzard
Again,
weather.
it's a blizzard, and the blizzard makes me not think very much of the military test either. Because why are you testing your missile in a blizzard?
Yeah.
It seems like a waste.
Well, unless you're just wanting to see what it can do in case you got to fire it in the snow. I don't know. Russia's up doing some weird stuff up on its northern borders now that the Arctic's breaking up.
Yeah, I know. I'm
They're
not
setting up some bases up there. Like there's some stuff going on. Like, and they shoot stuff off up there to test it.
That's true.
Why build the toys if you're not going to play with it, Dennis?
That's true.
There are other claims that the incident was a result of like a CIA KGB meeting involving the handing over of radioactive materials, which ultimately resulted in the deaths of 9 Soviet citizens. There's no real proof to these claims, and they rely pretty heavily on the simple fact that the Cold War was in its heyday, and there was if there was any chance at all that the United States could have been placed in a negative light, the Soviets would have taken it. However, there is reason to believe there could have been a type of entrapment scenario unfolding. For example, there was considerable indications of radiation, both in the area itself and on some of a couple of the hikers, as I said. Rumors would surface that the incident was an attempt to plant radioactive materials on CIA agents caught behind Soviet lines. Somehow, the operation went wrong and the hikers were killed. And if this theory was true, then that would mean that at least one of the hikers was a KGB operative.
Oh, gee, I wonder which one that would be in this group of 21 and 22-year-olds.
Hello, fellow students. I am 38.
Could it be Mr. Zolotarovyo?
Yep.
No, Semyon, I guess I'll call him.
Simeon. He also goes by Alexander.
Sir, you are twice these people's age.
I know, right? But yeah, so okay, so rumors would surface at the okay, I said that. So there are several theories that the hike into the mountains was secretly and against the majority of the hikers' knowledge a KGB operation. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of these claims is the fact that the oldest member of the group, Zolotaryov, yeah, and again, oh, the picture's down there. You can see him. This is you can scroll down and look. He's the guy on the right in between the two women.
Okay. He's having fun with the two women. I'm telling you, that's why he went on the trip.
And
That's
again, you can see and again, okay, back to the yet possible Yeti. I can see what you mean by the color scheme. Now, looking if you compare those two pictures, that could have been one of them up a hill.
yeah. And just because they're not wearing ski mask in this picture doesn't mean they're not wearing ski mask ever.
True. I'll give yeah, yeah. I'd
This
agree
seems
with
to be
that.
a pretty laid back picture.
So as I kind of mentioned, old Zolotaryov was a last minute addition, but as I kind of said a little bit, he had extensive military and combat training, and we're not exactly sure why he was there. Perhaps the tattoo on his body is worth paying more attention to by researchers by researchers who are looking into this mysterious case. The tattoo reads Dermuazuaya. I'm just going to
Wow.
spell it out because it's not a real word in any language. It's Daermmuazuaya. I don't know what that stands for.
What? Okay.
Nobody does.
And it's not even Russian.
Nope. Uh, again, people who like have thought about this, like theorists or whatever, assume it is either some sort of a secret military tag or some sort of a like secret society's moniker.
Bizarre. My theory is this is an old dude who liked to party. Also, we should stop calling him old because we're way closer to his age than
Oh
we
no,
are.
it's true.
And one night he was a little tipsy. He went into a tattoo parlor in Moscow, and they said, "What do you want, man?" He
Well,
said,
if you go on with
They said, "All right, buddy. All right, we're gonna do that." And then that's
yeah,
he got the tattoo.
I mean maybe, I guess.
No, that does seem like a bizarre.
Also, if you start going on hiking trips with a bunch of 20-year-olds, I'm going to call you the old dude on that trip.
Oh, I will.
Letting
Yeah.
you, I'm just letting you know.
Please don't let mysterious hiking trip deaths become part of my midlife crisis.
Oh man, I mean, it would make a great cryptic accounts episode.
A
I'll
dude,
I'll I'll investigate it just like these guys did. Like I will look hard into your death.
you're gonna replace me so fast. So,
I'll make a 3-part episode out of it. It'll be great.
and then we'll move on.
Yep.
So the guy with
I've got enough clips of your voice. I can just kind of splotch you in at this point.
the guy with extensive military training, who is twice everyone's age, who shows up late on the trip and has a mysterious. It seems like a code. It's just it's a
Yep.
random assortment of letters. It's like it might as well be numbers
Yep.
tattooed on him. I mean, that screams to me KGB.
Yep.
Now, why was the KGB leading a bunch of college students into a blizzard? That's the next question.
Well, he just joined this group that was already going. This group of kids.
Right, but I'm saying if there's some theory that he was directing them out there, or this was
No, like I said, he joined them. Like from what I gathered, they were already planning on going somewhere along the way, possibly when they were hitchhiking. Because remember, they hitchhiked there at the beginning. Like I don't know when they met this dude. He was just
yeah, but
he was just with them when they died.
if this is some plot to set up a CIA agent or something, they could have been doing this trip well in advance on purpose for the government, and they would have said, "Hey, you're going to meet your informant."
That's possible. They could
You
all
know,
be in on it. Yeah.
like 10 miles away from the site, and then he's going to join you. And that, just including this random creepy ass old guy like on your trip, is just so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy just being there I didn't think much of the government stuff because I'm like, what's the point of going into a blizzard? But that guy just being there. Now, do we know if this blizzard was a pop up blizzard? Like maybe no one expected it. Maybe it wasn't
No,
a.
it's the time of year when they have blizzards. Like I said, the Mansi indigenous people, they don't go to this mountain during this time because it is known to have bad blizzards and all these bad, like that's why they're saying these vortex winds are possible. Like bad stuff happens in winter in these mountains. Like they don't go there. They don't go hunt there. That's not where they don't do anything there.
Yeah.
Especially in February.
And that to me tells me the Mansi theory isn't very good because why would they be up on the mountain killing
Yeah.
people? Man. Oh, the UFO keeps climbing up the list.
It really does.
Is what's happening. It's very rare when you look at all the theories and UFO keeps getting.
Well, and again, you've got official people from the government years later after they could finally say something, say it was UFOs, you guys. That's what I concluded. I just couldn't tell you when I did the investigation.
Yeah, bizarre.
That's a weird thing to come out with later on. So if there's,
unless you lived most of your life in the Soviet Union, you just want a paycheck from a tabloid.
that's true. I guess, yeah, that's true. There could always be that. So if there's any truth to the Zolotaryov or any of the Dyatlov crew being KGB agents, what their mission might have been is really still anyone's guess.
Yeah.
Some theories would persist that the deaths were the result of attacks from local tribes in the area, most notably the Mansi tribe. But there's no real evidence of this. Also, the Mansi were largely peaceful and uninterested in the outside world. Furthermore, much like the details already mentioned when examining the apparent escape from the tent, there was no evidence in the surrounding snow, which was largely undisturbed, of such an approach by a tribe who wouldn't have been thinking at all of covering their tracks, certainly not after the attack. And for an attack to happen at night in the middle of an apparent blizzard, it's even more unlikely.
That theory doesn't make any sense.
No. Also, and I don't think I put it in here, but the Mansi were like they trade stuff with people that actually come out. Like they're pretty friendly.
Yeah. Why are they going up to their scary mountain to kill people
Yeah.
in the middle of a blizzard? They don't even want to be there themselves.
Yeah, they're not even in that area at the time.
And apparently they're peaceful. Yeah, it does. Nah, I don't buy the Mansi at all. I put UFO above that. I put dwarfs above that, but unfortunately, somebody next week on Cryptic Accounts, tune in to hear the Dyatlov Pass mystery told by Dennis Janey, an hour and a half
of dwarf
defense of the dwarf theory.
I should have given it more. I just kind of glanced over it. I'm like, well, dude, there was a bunch of them where it's just like, there was some crazy ones. There's some weird folklore that got twisted into all this, like heavy folklore. There was stories of like Anunnaki stuff. Like they were all over the place on like what could possibly be happening to these people.
Right.
So perhaps one of the most bizarre, I know what, yeah, I haven't even got to the most bizarre yet.
Ooh.
Although this one, grounded in scientific thought, is the gravity fluctuation theory. What this theory essentially argues is that there was a sudden drop in gravity in a corridor that the hikers were unfortunately camped in. This is a little known and unproven phenomenon, but it does, at least in theory, explain the eventual location of the campers' bodies. For example, it is argued that those who first rushed outside the camp were essentially placed into a non-gravitational situation where they died instantly, as if they were in a vacuum. The others were dragged from the tent, which would explain the tears from the inside. They were literally ripped from the tent due to the sudden and dramatic drop in gravity. It is argued that this unusual phenomenon occurs more than people realize, but rarely results in a drastic situation, as people aren't usually caught in the event. Some researchers even claim that if the hikers had simply kept their tent shut, they would have survived the rare incident. So this theory could... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, please keep going.
This theory could explain the mysterious deaths, the reports of strange lights, and the air of secrecy with which the Soviet authorities handled the incident. Many rumors persisted in the area that the Soviets would regularly test secret weapons also. Some have claimed that neutron weapons were in use. The injuries of some of the campers who had severe internal trauma but little external damage would certainly suggest some sort of advanced and secretive technology.
That sounds like a sound wave or wave technology of some sort.
Maybe.
I was just reading this this week that there's some new cancer technology they're going to start doing that uses like I think electromagnetic or sound waves of some sort that can like go through you and like kill a tumor.
Yep. I
Essentially,
think
cause
it. I think it's
yeah,
sound waves
fascinating.
because they can do it. I believe with kidney stones now.
Now
They can
this,
break up kidney stones with sound waves.
yes, I did know that. Now this gravitational thing fascinates me. It kind of reminds me of the slips and times in space thing.
Yeah, that's why. That's actually why that one made it in here. I kind of. It had that feel to it to me too. I'm like, well, we know that this weird things kind of glitch in reality like that. Like that could be some weird phenomenon that happens.
Yeah, that's I might have to look into that like deeply and do a show on that because that's the idea that there's this whole theory. I'd never heard this that there's just like gravity stops randomly, but
Yeah,
then yeah, that's
it did almost become the show. It was really hard. I was like, nope. I'm already this far into this. Like we're doing the episode on this.
stuff is so interesting. Oh my gosh.
But it's always something because, as with many things, I'm sure it will come back around because, yeah, it is one of the most interesting theories I found.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Also, is that some sort of a weapon? Maybe that's not even a natural thing
Yeah,
that was happening. Like maybe that was they were testing some weird weapon out there.
yeah, maybe. It's just I
Because
just
a lot of people pointed to weapons testing going out because it is a very remote region. Like if you were the military and you wanted to try some new weird stuff, you would, and you're Russian, you've got all these mountains and just desolate areas. That's probably where you'd go do some weird stuff.
I just keep thinking a blizzard is the worst time to do that because you couldn't get videotape.
Do you think a
You could
UFO has a problem flying around in a blizzard?
well, they crash sometimes.
Well, okay, sometimes.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, as far as weapon testing, if we're talking about just forget the aliens, it's
Yeah.
just some Russian missile or
I'm saying it's
gravitational.
a Russian, it could be a Russian UFO. I'm saying the UFO doesn't have to be extraterrestrial based on what we did in the esoteric Hitlerism stuff. Like the
Right.
Nazis had UFOs in the 30s and 40s. We're 20 years later now.
Well, then let's change. That's true, and I actually you convinced me now. But I was just to explain what I'm saying. Let's split the two categories into exotic
Yeah.
weapons versus like traditional weapons. Testing like a missile or a neutron bomb or something in a blizzard makes zero sense because
It does though.
the whole point of testing though is you can take seismograph records, you can take videotape, and you can do none of
The
that in a
point
blizzard.
the point is the same reason that after World War II we sent Americans down to Antarctica to train
Yeah,
for you might have to fight in this. We,
you've
we don't
owned you've
we
owned
don't
me.
just we don't
All
just
right,
do we don't just do war on nice sunny days.
right. They
It's
might have
war
just
season from May until September, and then we take a good 6 months off because the weather gets not so great. That's not how it works. Like we may have to shoot this in a blizzard.
But what's the so obviously they weren't caught in a nuclear bomb.
No,
Obviously they weren't caught in a missile.
no.
Let's say it's some hyper secret sound wave technology.
Yeah.
Were they the targets on purpose?
Maybe you're trying to see if you can do weird things with avalanches and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I was gonna say because you would expect no one to be out there. Like either they were like, hey, we got some randos out here. Let's go ahead and sound wave them, or they were just gonna shoot it into a mountain for no
I
reason.
don't know. Based on what you know about Soviet Russia, that one could really go either way. That
Yeah.
could be like, we've got an opportunity. There's some people out there, or whoops, there were people out there. Either way, write about it, lock it up. We're not going to talk about it. We learned something.
Yeah.
Um. So okay. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of the whole dire, terrible situation is that of Yuri Yudin. And I didn't catch this. I read off 10 names at the beginning, but then there were only 9 people that died.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't catch that. Good job.
Yuri, only 24 hours into the ill fated excursion, would become very, very ill, severe enough that he had to return to their set-off point where they stashed their gear. And knowing what we know now about the Groose situation, it was perhaps the most well-timed illness in the entirety of the 20th century. Like,
Oh yeah.
so whatever the sickness was, it ultimately saved his life. Indeed, it perhaps makes one ponder the precariousness of our existence, where one circumstance, seemingly an innocent and trivial thing, could turn everything around. So, regardless of decision, would allow your Uden to live out his life, which he did. And although he never had anything of real significance to add to the investigation uh, into the death of his colleagues, throughout his life, at the very end, he got asked one last time, not too long before he died, and the only thing he ever said about it was that, quote, his friends must have saw something they shouldn't have seen, and they were forced at gunpoint to fabricate a scene to confuse investigators, then left to die. He thought that, like, basically they saw something, and then they got, like, basically strategically placed and, like, I don't know, held at gunpoint or killed in these various locations under weird circumstances just to confuse whatever was happening. That's what Yuri thinks about what happened to his
Shit.
friends.
That's interesting. I can't get it out of my head the idea of sending out troops in a blizzard
Mhm.
to kill 8 college students. I mean, yeah, I guess it's possible.
Well, and if you thought one of them was a spy, again, why would you let them go so far away before you did it? It's not like you were
Right.
trying to pick one off. Like, you end up killing all of them. Why would you wait till they get out? You could have done it in the abandoned camp that they were in at the very beginning, the abandoned village.
Yeah, okay, so let me put on my ultra skeptical hat here.
Okay.
So Yuri left prior to any of the strange events. Now we know Russians love their conspiracy theories, which is why if you're in Russia right now, you need to subscribe to our show.
Yes.
So Yuri, like everyone else, just like their families and stuff, like we talked about earlier, really was not there to eyewitness anything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he likes the theory that there was a test. You know, maybe he likes a specific theory. Theory.
Maybe.
He might
And
not have.
again, yeah, they're Russians. They're all going to, by and large, a lot of them are going to latch on to one or the other.
Right. He has to latch on to something, and he wasn't there to see anyone take them at gunpoint, but he's gonna read the same tabloids, he's gonna say what happened to
Yep.
my friends. Now it is interesting though that every person who personally knew these people, the parents of the main guy and the guy who left, have said government.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I thought about that too. Part of me, I'm kind of torn on what I think about that because on the one hand, I'm like, do they know something? But at the same time, I'm like, if I grew up in Soviet Russia, every time somebody disappeared, there's like a 60% chance that
Government.
it
Yeah.
was the government. So that just becomes your default like response to tragedy, kind of, I think. Is you
Especially a tragedy you don't want to believe. Like you go
Yes.
out with 8 of your best friends and all of them die,
Yeah.
and it's like he probably has immense survivor guilt.
I would imagine so.
Why was it me that got the stomach bug, you know, instead of my friend or my girlfriend or whatever? Um, and to say in 1990s after your whole, I mean, all the God, can you just imagine living in a country where like most of your life you spend like in this fear of the government, and then like one day it's like you can finally say what you think and you can finally talk about all this trauma, and there's this time my friends died and there's this time my uncle disappeared, and I mean it has to be just be immensely psychological
Yeah.
pressure.
Dude, yeah, finally be able to release all that stuff.
Yeah, and there's probably just so much built in and caked in. I'm
Yep.
still yeah, so
So back to the inquiry that the government did in 2019, the Russian prosecutor general ruled out criminal explanations and said it was focusing on three natural causes for the death of the expedition members. It was either an avalanche, a snow slab, or possibly a hurricane. That's
uh
right, I said hurricane.
Is that the same idea as that vortex thing we talked about earlier, or
It's unclear what they meant by that. They just said hurricane in the official stuff. We think
maybe
it might be an avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane.
okie doke? I guess I don't know the scientific definition of a hurricane because it wasn't the hurricane.
And I feel like that may be where I'm getting hung up on too. I did not look that up. I just
There might be some definition as like a wind vortex of a certain size.
and if it's got enough snow, it becomes water. I guess.
This was just a really bad night.
I don't know. I guess I don't really know what you call a snow tornado either, though.
You
So
would think if something that crazy was happening, you would think that there'd be other reports, like the towns nearby had like roofs blown off, or
yep, you would think that, wouldn't you? I
yeah,
can let you know right now. There, I did not see any reports of that nature.
yeah. I'm still putting. I'm going to be honest on this one. Contrary to my nature, usually my number one is that like something natural happened here, or some combination of something happened. My number two at this point is honestly the UFOs. I honestly think you can make a just as good a defense of UFOs as anything in this case. It's just so hard to have 8 kids out in a blizzard by Death Mountain and be like, oh, well, it couldn't have been natural. Like crazy stuff happens. You know what I mean? Like we have.
Well, according to the prosecutor general, that's the only reason we're going to look at is.
Well, the government they can't be like, oh, also it might have been UFOs. They have to just completely leave that out.
I mean, in 2019, we're already kind of things are kind of getting disclosed at this point. Like
Yeah,
Russia's doing it too.
yeah,
In
but
fact, a lot of times they're more open about stuff that they see than the U.S. has been.
doesn't that fact go against the UFO theory? If he has less reason to hide it and he doesn't bring it up, then is it doesn't that mean the investigation would tend to more show it was not UFOs?
Unless they're not allowed to bring up whatever this is.
That's what I'm saying. But well, that's true.
It's again, these people died in weird circumstances. You've got the old investigator and stuff from the 50s talking about heat weapons and stuff. But then there's snow, so there's a lot of weird ideas going on, all from like official people.
I'm gonna call it a snowicane. This snowicane theory would explain broken bones, flying through
Yeah,
trees, if there's some kind of snownado or snowicane.
I think that's really the vortex thing we were talking about, really, probably. But yeah, I like that, the snow cane,
Yeah,
because that is probably why they're calling it a hurricane. Is it collects so much moisture, it probably is almost like water.
right.
So okay, so for months, fantastic new theories emerged on websites and TV shows, while Kuncevic and relatives of some of the Dyatlov group were angry at the prosecutor's refusal to consider non-natural causes for the deaths. They filed a complaint asking investigators to open a criminal case. I couldn't find anything about a criminal case being open, so no.
They're mad because your relatives walked into a blizzard and died is like not the that doesn't give you.
Closure
Yeah,
like you
you want
want.
you want someone to be blamed. And
So, in a study published in the Nature Journal Communications, Earth and Environment in 2021, just a couple months ago, it's been ruled out. It's been ruled that it was in fact a slab avalanche. This theory isn't exactly new either. Researchers have long been skeptical about the avalanche notion. However, due to the grade of the hill, slab avalanches don't need a steep slope to get started. Crown or flank fractures can quickly release as little as a few centimeters of earth or snow sliding down a hill or mountain. As researchers Johann Guam, Switzerland's WSL Institute for Snow and Avalanche Research, SLF, and Alexander Puzrin, Switzerland's Institute for Geotechnical Engineering, wrote it was, quote, a combination of irregular topography, a cut made in the slope to install the tent, and the subsequent deposition of snow induced by strong katabatic winds, which contributed after a suitable time to the slab release, which caused severe non-fatal injuries in agreement with the autopsy results. So you can see here, we can describe the picture a little bit. Basically, they've dug down next to a ridge to hit ground, but because of that, I think what these researchers are saying is what was next to them wasn't as solid of a snow embankment or ridge
As I
as they
thought
thought
it
it was.
was.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, but the thing you have to think about here is they didn't dig down through this whole thing, which I mean, it's taller than the tent. So this snow was already formed like this in some manner in a straight off ledge like that, which I guess it could have just been blowing.
So I had to Google slab avalanche.
Uh-huh.
And a slab is a cohesive plate of snow that slides as a unit on the snow underneath.
Okay, that makes sense.
So there could have been what appeared to be a very strong snowbank or something, but there could have been a layer above that was more cohesive with itself that causes these type of.
And then the drift above that, and yeah, that weaker layer, the bottom layer, is basically what slides and takes this whole big slab, which is the bulk of this ridge, actually down over them.
Right.
Which, okay, that's possible, but that doesn't. So they're running out of the tent maybe because it's collapsed and they're ripping their way out of it.
Yeah,
That doesn't explain why you would run away from the camp, though.
Yeah, well, no, it does, because you would have no way of knowing inside that tent what's happening. You're in the middle of a blizzard, and all of a sudden, a snowbank, you hear, and snow hits you. You don't know how big of an avalanche it is.
That's true.
You don't know what's going on. All you could do is just is cut your way out and run away.
But how do you jump into a tree?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Where'd
That
lady
makes any sense. I feel like I'm 100 times more skeptical on this, but I'm actually not. I'm 100 times more confused, and I'm just trying to find one thing that makes any sense. And this is getting closer. I would say this is better. This is better than Snownado or whatever.
Well, this is in 2021. This is the official Russian belief on what happened to these people over 60 years ago.
Now, how sure are we about the human DNA in the trees? How sure are we that they didn't grab tree branches to start a fire and that's why their DNA was on there?
Possible.
Was there like clothing in the trees? Was there like...
No, it was just like blood is what I gathered.
I mean, maybe that was one of them who was trying, you just had your camp wreck. You would know if you were these people. They seem to be experienced hikers. You would know, like, I'm going to die. I have to do everything I can do. And like, maybe you're in your pajamas, you grab a tree branch.
Maybe maybe climatry is a thing to do in an avalanche to try and get up above.
Yeah.
If you think there's a whole bunch of snow getting ready to come, get your way to the top because you don't want to get buried in it because you can't climb out. But if you can be somewhere high when the snow comes, maybe you can hop down on it and swim your way through it from the top. So maybe.
Yeah.
You would think more of them would have tried to do that if that was the case. Again.
Yeah, but everyone's freaking out and everyone just has run out of this tent in different directions. We're all probably following our best friend. We're not like a cohesive group with a plan here. It's like we heard a noise, snow has hit our tent. We have to get out before we're buried.
Well, but being an educated group that's experienced, you wouldn't think they would go in 5 different directions, all from the same starting point. They've all got to rip out of that hole in that tent and basically go through it.
Yeah, but what would tell you that they have to go in a straight line, basically?
I don't know. I mean, they're starting in a pretty close proximity together to begin. Again, this is not a massive like multi-room tent. Like this is not very big.
Yeah, but
I would say looking at the pictures of it that I saw,
this would be panic though.
Maybe like 8 by 8, maybe.
To me, that's just 1 foot.
10 by 10, maybe.
1 foot per Russian. It's just.
basically, yeah, let's go 10 by 10, and basically, yeah, a foot or a little over a foot per person.
I hate to say it, but I kind of like this theory. Didn't you
Yeah.
also just say that the trauma from that initial snow blow would cause like a broken bone or a
They claim again. These researchers claim that the non-fatal injuries agreed with autopsy reports of like a slab release injury. Like it made sense to them that that would have happened.
but what about that tongue though?
The tongue, the eyebrow, again, the eyebrow.
That could
Bite
also
out a tongue maybe somehow in the panic. I guess how you lose an eyebrow.
an opportunistic. I mean, I just keep thinking like, so you have basically a mini avalanche,
Yeah.
but you don't know that when you're in that point. Everyone thinks they're going to die. People, even the most professional people, panic. Them running off in different directions does not surprise me at all.
But
Uh,
you think they would have regrouped better.
in the middle of a blizzard with 40
Well,
miles
but the
an hour.
farthest ones only made it a couple hundred feet. Like they weren't miles away. They weren't even a quarter mile away. Like
How
they were
long does
in
it,
they were in
how long
yelling distance of each other.
how long does it take though if I have my ribs broken from the snow, but you were closer to the edge of the tent, and then I'm yelling to you, "Help! My ribs are broken!" and
Yeah.
you're in pajamas, an experienced hiker in the middle of the blizzard. You know you're going to die. You're just in
Yeah.
like survival mode at that point. You just start ripping branches off of trees. That's where to try to make a fire.
Yeah.
That's where the blood comes from. Like, are you gonna come save me? Like for real? Like, I know you love me, but you ain't gonna do that. You're gonna try to make that fire with Lady Luda, and you're gonna die in your pajamas.
Yeah.
And then maybe some of us are buried more or less based on how far we got away and in what directions, and there's still this ongoing avalanche situation. Maybe some of us are buried so much that it's just the crushing snow that hurts us. Maybe others are left open to predators, a wolf or something comes by the next day and eats your tongue or rips off your eyebrow. And then you just have this weird, and then one guy tried to make a fire out of a tree, and you just have this weird, I mean, this, I can't believe this is how I might be ending a cryptic accounts episode, but like that almost makes most sense. And that should make the listeners trust me, because that means when I say it's aliens, I really mean it's aliens. Also, this might be aliens.
uh, so okay. So just to kind of sum up, configurations of the Dyatlov tent install on a flat surface after making a cut into the slope below a small shoulder. Snow deposition above the tent, deposition above the tent is due to wind transport of snow. Add to this the Russian leadership's long-standing battle with or against the truth. In 2015, the investigative committee of the Russian Federation decided to reopen this case, also back then. And 4 years later, the agency concluded it was indeed a snow avalanche, an assertion immediately challenged within the Russian Federation. The oppositional agency eventually agreed as well. The problem was neither really providing conclusive scientific evidence. Guami and Puzrin went to work then. They provided four critical factors that confirmed the avalanche: the location of the tent under a shoulder and a locally steeper slope to protect them from the wind, a buried weak snow layer parallel to the locally steeper terrain, which resulted in an upward thinning snow slab. The cut in the snow slab made by the group to install the tent, strong katabatic winds that led to progressive snow accumulation due to the local topography, shoulder above the tent, causing a delayed failure.
Right.
So, case closed.
It's hard to say closed, but if I was on a jury, man, I for this one, I gotta vote that last. I gotta vote that avalanche. I have so many problems with any of these government theories. I I don't know what the deal is with this 38-year-old dude, but he looks to be having a great time in that photograph.
I mean,
Um, the
it didn't seem
Bigfoot,
happy.
the uh, the abominable snowman thing doesn't doesn't strike me. It looks like a guy in a full snowsuit. And also, I think the abominable snowman is supposed to be white. Wouldn't you normally blend in with your environment? Like that looks
Unless
like
you're
a
trying
big.
to be a tree.
That looks. Gotta be there. The UFO and stuff that they reported in that area is very interesting. Perhaps, though, I mean, let me float a side theory. Maybe the KGB guy, maybe the 38-year-old guy was KGB, and maybe they sent out some helicopters after him because they're like something's going wrong.
Maybe.
Or maybe UFOs hover around sites of tragedy because they love to suck off our dark mental emotions. I'm leaning towards the slap theory. Honestly, I'm leaning towards it, but I want to hear what you think because you did all this research.
I mean, I don't have a definitive opinion on this, honestly. I don't think the gravity thing, although it's a fun one and we definitely should look into that whole thing more deeply at some point. Um I do think it was maybe somehow related to this 38 year old guy possibly being some sort of a spy. Maybe they were all spies in some capacity. But I don't rule out the UFO stuff either. Whether that's a Russian UFO or an extraterrestrial UFO, I'm not sure. Because again, I could see them trying to test stuff like this in extreme weather conditions to find out what they can do. Could we fly up in a flying saucer and take some people out without anybody knowing and take off? Can we maneuver this thing in a blizzard?
Right.
So yeah, I don't have a definitive opinion.
And I guess technically I'm with
And
you.
maybe I read too many Russians talking about it, but I'm like, I don't trust the government.
No, definitely I don't either.
I'm like, I don't trust the Russian official report. Like, we stand together on this, comrade.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just, to me,
I could
there's
see the slab thing though.
there's just that the slab thing to me is like my 51% theory.
I just have a hard time thinking that they wouldn't know enough. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
seems
but
like
you're in the middle of a blizzard, or it's getting ready to start, and you got to lay down camp. Like, and the whole point of the slab theory is that, from what I'm reading here, is that it's not like you're building it on a traditional snow base. It's like there's this whole buildup of snow on a specific
yeah,
road. Like it's like something like topographical. Like
yeah,
like maybe a very, 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 very experienced person, but you mostly have 21-year-olds here, and
yeah,
it's probably dark or getting close to dark. You don't know how bad, and also what you just said was that it may have not even been enough on its own. It took the extra snow from the blizzard to make it unstable.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
and them digging down a little bit too, and unsettling the bottom layer of the pack. But yeah, no, it's yeah.
yeah, I can't. Please, listeners, let it build our credibility. Not I'm voting for this avalanche theory. I am. I think it explains. It might also explain a lot of the other. I don't know, man. But the strange lights in the area, like, but the thing is,
Strange lights on the camera.
as we're finding out, UFOs are way more common. Like UFOs could have just been part of this story that had nothing
Yep.
to do with their deaths. Um,
That's
I
also I hadn't really thought about. Yeah, you're right. That could just be an element of all this that actually had nothing to do with. That could be a UFO or something that they're trying to take a picture of in that frame 17.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, if
that,
you
that
take
that
all
didn't
the
have anything
UFO,
to do with them
yeah,
dying.
you take all the UFO stuff as true. It's just my big problem with this case is they're in this terrible blizzard. It
Yeah,
makes me hard to believe a military thing. It makes me hard to believe a. I understand your explanations. It makes it hard for me to believe any military or spy thing was going on that caused their death.
yeah,
Maybe that 38-year-old guy was a spy, but like it just seems that the forces of nature are so much more powerful than any of this government stuff. Maybe they flew a plane out in a blizzard to see if they could kill 8 random kids and then cover it up while also allowing an investigation. Like it just doesn't. No, I think this was some sort of terrible accident, but also but the Russian, and maybe this is perfectly why this is for a conspiracy show, that like the fact that this might be something as simple as an avalanche death, but in that political environment,
Hmm.
they couldn't allow that to just be a news story. Like 8 people went out into a blizzard and got killed in an avalanche. It had to become this giant conspiracy that grew over decades and decades and decades. Just
Well, they
shows
got
how,
lied to about it for 30 years
yeah,
and
just
got told next to nothing about it. Like nobody would tell them what happened.
right. I think this just pinpoints, if you believe that it's the common explanation of an avalanche, it just pinpoints how much government deception messes with people's minds, and it makes people distrustful.
Yep.
So that's my last take.
No, that's good, and I'm gonna leave it there. Uh, take away what you want, listener. Which theory do you think it is? 'Cause there's a few good ones in there.
I mean, I still believe it was the trolls, but the dwarf.
Well, tune in next week when we tackle the Russian dwarf problem.
All right, thank you, Patrick. This was a great show. Thank you.
Thanks for being here with me. This is fun. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back next week. Thank you all. Bye.